Chapter 6. Former captain of the UFP SS Charybdis Nishark tilted her head up high, attempting to maintain dignity in the face of this mortar. The space pirate had introduced himself as John Hart, a former time agent, whatever that meant. He and his hooligans had boarded unannounced, then proceeded to terrify the crew and the officer complement of the vessel on their way to the bridge. After witnessing the bridge officers vanish, Fichagio trained his gun at Nis's face.
"Where'd they go?"
John Hart slapped the firearm downward, diverting its aim to the floor. "You really think she has a clue? Look, that's enough. You and Raw go find exactly how this stranger in red can disappear at will, taking my hostages with him, I might add." Fichagio said nothing, leering at Captain Nishark. She diverted her gaze from him back to their leader. "We should speak privately." The pirate captain regarded his lackeys. "What the hell are you waiting for? Find me this crimson arm of time, and get me some damn answers. You drag him back here, half dead if it need be. Go." Raw exited the strobing emergency lit bridge, followed by Fichagio.
"I don't like it,"
he said.
"Don't like what?"
Raw pretended to care.
"John alone with that bitch captain. So what? I'm telling you, John trying to be all buddy-buddy with her just ain't sitting right with me."
Raw checked his weapon.
"Yeah? Well, so what?"
Back inside the bridge, John Hart waited until his enforcers left before disengaging the alarms. He sighed, then strode over to Nishark, grabbing her roughly by the waist. The pirate ground his lips upon hers, and Captain Nishark kissed him back, passionately. Zhang blinked in surprise as she looked around at the massive, yet empty space cafeteria. As she stared dumbfounded, she asked no one in particular. Wait. How in God's name did I? "This is the eating establishment," Warlick announced. His deep voice echoed back from the vacant cafe. The securities chief noticed that others of the bridge crew, Navi and Zhang, had also somehow been transported safely without their knowledge. Lieutenant Navi stood up. "I don't understand what happened here, but we need to get back to the bridge."
"Negative."
Warlick also stood, furiously trying to clear the haze from his eyes and his thoughts.
"The captain can handle herself. The mortars have committed no actual assaults. I say we head to engineering or medical, and we try to initiate contact with the rest of the UFP Deep Space Fleet."
First, Zhang stood, as well, stretching. "Can anyone tell me what happened? We were on the bridge."
"Weapons trained on us,"
Warlick reminded them. "Yes, thank you. Anyway, next thing I know, that stranger in red suit disappeared." Navi inhaled sharply. "You think we've been kidnapped?" "What? No, that is not what I..."
"We need to arm ourselves, head toward engineering, try to find and capture one of these space pirates."
Warlick crossed his arms, stating conclusively,
"Learn the exact reason why they want the Charybdis and Captain Hark."
Zhang watched the glowing crimson emergency lockdown lights flash bright and dim, alternating. "That is going to be next to impossible, Mr. Security." Warlick looked displeased. Zhang continued. "All access to primary systems have been cut off. That includes engineering, medical." Warlick grudgingly nodded.
"I'm aware of."
"And the bridge," Zhang finished. "I don't see how we can communicate with the UFP fleet or get anywhere useful." Navi stared back and forth between them. "What are we supposed to do?" Warlick walked to the entrance and looked back at his fellow officers.
"As I said, I don't know about you two, but I'm going to find some weapons. Then I'm going to find some answers."
Zhang and Navi peered at each other, then followed. Having noted that almost the entire crew were confined to quarters due to the emergency lockdown, Rawl and Fichagio decided to check on their exit strategy. Stu was preparing escape pods in the main emergency hangar when the space pirates walked in. Fichagio looked around.
You ain't happened to see some invisible bridge officers hiding out in here, have you?
Stu turned to him.
What? Don't worry about it,
Rawl shrugged.
Captain John's got us chasing ghosts.
Stu continued to type into an escape pod's terminal.
Right. We about ready here?
Fichagio asked.
Yup,
Stu answered.
I've got about almost all of the pods ready. When is the ETA for, departure? Whenever Captain tells us the vortex manipulator got instilled and set to override navigation,
Rawl said. Fichagio shook his head while checking his firearm.
Yeah, I'm sure. Whatever the hell that means.
Stu wiped his face on his sleeve.
Gotta say I'm nervous. Haven't heard of the time agency before now, and I sure as the hell have never turned a UFP vessel into a gigantic battering ram.
Rawl shook his head.
Your paychecks should take care of some of that nervousness.
Stu nodded.
Well, sure. But I worry about what kind of effect that crashing a city-sized ship into planet Earth is going to have. Hey.
Fichagio shoved Stu.
John Hart says he used to be a time agent, and he ain't lied to me yet. He says when the Charybdis crashes into Cardiff in the year 2011, we'll be rich and all our problems will be over.
Okay. Stu held up his hands defensively.
Don't you know what that means? The entire planet will probably be vaporized, like hundreds of years before we're born.
Fichagio laughed.
I don't give a shit. I was born on Titan. Right.
Rawl smiled.
Just do your job, Stupitsky.
It's Stupnitsky.
Nobody cares.
Rawl roared at him.
Why don't you let the actual time traveler worry about the paradox crap? Get to work.
After the mortars departed, Stu, in a self-loathing rage, flung his tools across the room and sent them crashing to the floor, one by one. He'd exhausted himself. He collapsed on a chair, staring at the communications panel, and he struggled internally with calling down to engineering to see if he could get a hold of that cutie D3. She wasn't a member of the Coryopsis Charybdis, and she didn't deserve to die here like everyone else on the ship would. Stu decided that he was going to do something about it. Stranded in the massive technological marvel, which was the engineering section, D3 and her retired Commodore friend Sully were becoming less and less impressed by the Charybdis each passing moment. I thought he gave you a communicator. D3 threw her hands in the air. Sully looked up to the heavens.
No, he told me he gave it to you. I swear to God, I'm gonna bloody well kill him. Again.
D3 shook her head as she placed her hands on her hips, feeling helpless, staring around and desperately trying to think of a way out of this situation. There was a shrill alarm sound. This one different from the ship-wide warning, which had been announcing itself by blaring loudly for the better part of 2 hours.
Oh, maybe that's him.
Sully jogged like a goof over to the futuristic console station.
Now, how do I?
Let me hit.
I can do it. Just show me which buttons go.
It's not that one. D3 tried to push Sully out of the way.
But if it's...
Sully kept pressing the wrong buttons.
Well, is it pound star? 'Cause...
No, that's information. Why don't you let me?
I can do it, damn it, lass. If you press 9 for an outside line.
What?
Oh, that only gets me tech support.
D3 was ready to pull her own hair out. You stupid old fart. She slammed a lever. Chief Engineer Stupnetsky's worried face appeared in front of them on the monitor. The excited visages of D3 and some old guy turned from happy to disappointed.
You were expecting someone else, I guess?
Stu asked.
Who's this, then?
Sully demanded. D3 waved at Stu over the vidcom. Hi, I was hoping to hear from Kapes Ilanikorkves Traveler by now.
Who?
D3 ignored the question and pointed a finger at him.
How long are you planning on keeping us in here, you asshole?
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
Stu nodded.
Things are getting weird. Here, look. I'm going to work on letting you and your grandpa out so you can...
The retired Commodore lit a cigarette.
Oi! I'll have you know!
Stu interrupted him.
I'll have an extra escape pod waiting for you, okay? I'll get the entrance unblocked in just a bit, and when the door opens, you two get to the main emergency hangar, alright? I'll meet up with you there.
D3 rubbed her eyes.
Look, Stu, that doesn't explain...
I'll explain later.
Stu barked, then vanished from the screen.
Perfect.
Sully rolled his eyes.
Now then, where the hell is Traveler?
After their torrid embrace, Jack Hart withdrew from Captain Hark's lips. He grinned like a shark. Are you ready for this? Captain Hark nodded.
The only thing that doesn't make sense to me now is how I'll be okay.
The pirate captain moved his hands from her waist up to her shoulders. That part is fairly simple, actually. Even though you're the great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Jack Harkness. If you're in a temporal void static shell warp bubble.
See, that right there. That's where you lose me.
Captain Hark crossed her arms. Basically, you're going to be outside of time, in a state what's called temporal grace. You won't even be affected by the fact that I'm going to kill your distant ancestor.
But I don't understand how that's possible.
Of course not. Jack Hart laughed. You've never worked for the Time Agency. Suffice to say, regardless of the fact that Jack Harkness is immortal, if I throw the entire Corruptus Charybdis on top of him, he'll be out of the picture, permanently. I can virtually guarantee it. Captain Hark laid her head on his shoulder.
Guess I'm wary is all.
Hey. John Hart embraced her. You're the only one with his DNA. The only one I could track him down back through history. So don't be wary. I literally could not pull this off without you.
Isn't there a time police agency or something like that? Don't you have to worry about someone trying to stop you?
John Hart smiled once more. Oh, supposedly. Countless millennium ago, there were a race called the Time Lords, who used to keep the temporal peace, so to speak. But they've been gone a long, long time. Nothing to worry about now.
And that, strange man in the red suit, Mr. Invisible, he seems like...
Suddenly, the pirate captain was impatient. Look, Ness, there is nothing to worry about. Rawl and Fachagio are taking care of it. Captain Hark sighed.
If you say so. I'm telling you, I have a bad feeling about...
John slammed his fist on a panel. Fine, I'll check. Rawl, Fachagio, tell me you have the corpse of this wayward meddler. Fachagio mumbled for the right words, while trying not to sound ridiculously sarcastic.
You know when he went invisible, right, boss?
On the other end of the communicator, Fachagio and Rawl heard the pirate captain breathe out very, very heavily and very, very slowly. He was almost whispering, Find yourself a thermal indicator.
Oh, what now, boss?
A damn warmth signature device, you moron. Even if he's invisible, the bastard will still give off heat. You'll be able to see him.
Boss.
Rawl held up a hand.
Sorry to interrupt. We've already tried that. He's nowhere, man.
Look harder.
We've looked everywhere.
Where the hell is he then? John Hart was shouting now. Where the hell is the man in red?